everybody, this is BioQuizzical, and for Biology Week we actually wanted to produce like a vlog or a podcast for biotechnology to sort of introduce it into the wider world, because a lot of the community may not really realise how much biotechnology that we use in the world, and that's one of our topics today. So today we want to talk about how we use biotechnology to augment ourselves or our surroundings, maybe even things that you didn't think were biotechnology. I'm Stephen.
I'm Ed.
I'm Maddie.
And let's just get started.
So the topic you wanted to introduce was biotech, virtually in like, everyday life and what you want.
And I think to really make the point, and my main one is there's a piece of biotechnology that's fairly recent that millions of people have inside their body. Right now, it's fairly recent. It's so common you may not realise what it is. Can you think of what it is? Can you think what I'm thinking of?
Is it eye thing?
No.
Millions of people that would use.
I don't know.
Oh, no.
If I said female contraception?
Oh, as in the pill?
No, as in the implant.
Oh, the implant.
I mean, you may not think of it as biotechnology, but at the end of the day, it is something you've injected into your body. It releases hormones very gently to keep you from hopefully having babies, as long as it's working. And it lasts like 3 years, so you have it in your body and you may even forget that it's even there.
I think it's 5 years.
Oh, is it 5 years?
It's 5 years.
So obviously there's some extreme examples, but there's examples like that, and obviously people have had pacemakers for decades, haven't they?
Pacemaker is an interesting one because you still can't go near a microwave with a pacemaker in. There's still those issues, isn't there?
There are these alternatives.
It's remarkable. Like I think sometimes you get those steps forwards, things like pacemakers and stuff, but then there's not really been much step forward beyond that. Like the idea of like antibiotics, obviously a flood of antibiotics came out, and then we're still. How many years away? We're like, how many years down the line since we've had a new novel drug?
And we still use penicillin.
Yeah, we still use penicillin.
It's 90 years later. And
it's kind of like everyone's gone, okay, we've solved that problem, let's move on and we'll come back to that later.
Yeah, and it's almost like they've gone, oh, we found this really good thing, and then like you said, 89 years later, we've gone.
Yeah, I think it's probably a massive market for the redevelopment of old technologies.
Yes.
Because of course the implant isn't infallible. You see, have you ever seen the statistics on
I have actually,
the hormonal control and what the effect on mood is? Because it is kind of like taking a sledgehammer to a tiny nail. It's like having a big brute force to try and solve a small issue, and it's just the wider impacts of it are not necessarily.
Yeah, I have met people who's had it for like a month or two, and then had to take it out.
Yeah, and the in utero one, I know so many. Yeah, exactly. That's the instant reaction.
It like got lost.
It's
not okay.
I love the pain that it puts women in. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And you just think that's a marketable product. It's ready yet.
No, exactly. But again, it is a solution to an old problem where contraception has been around since at least the ancient Egyptian times, and for female contraception, things like the pill, obviously it's hormone imbalances, but this is supposed to rectify having to take a pill around about the same time every day, and it's biotechnology. There's more extreme examples of biotechnology, of course, that we all know.
But the one that came to mind for me was actually when we started talking about implants was the anti-microbial film you get on like hip replacements and knee replacements.
Yes.
So they're actually coated with a substance so that microbes won't grow on them to help post-operation recovery.
Is this anything to do with silver? Have they got silver in it?
So there's a few different ways of doing them. I think that the ones that I knew of were an actual like chemical film, but they're looking now at using heavier metals as an antibiotic. Basically, it's the idea that silver's always been known as like a way of accelerating healing and avoiding infections. So they're looking at doing really, really simple refits on things like hospitals. So when you look at doorknobs and things,
I heard about
putting heavy metals into doorknobs or just coating them. So
I heard copper doorknobs. And apparently, it really reduces the risk of infection when you leave just by replacing a doorknob.
It's
which
crazy,
is fantastic.
Absolutely crazy.
But there's more, like you had a quite extreme example.
The Parkinsons thing.
Yeah.
reshape it. That's just like, I think it's an implant under your skull, and then I don't actually know how
It must be an electrode. It must be an electrode that goes into the brain and stimulates a certain area.
Or it regulates stimulations, because obviously like shaking and stuff.
So, because
you've seen the video? Have you seen the video?
I've seen a video of it wasn't a cranial implant. It was actually more like a watch.
Okay.
So there was a program, BBC program on a little while ago. I can't remember the name of it, but there was a woman who was an architect, and she was actually quite young, if I remember. She wasn't very old, and she was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and she started getting the tremors really early on. But of course, as an architect, she needs her hands because her ability to draw is her income. Well, of course, as soon as she got Parkinson's, she got the tremors, and she couldn't then draw. So what they did was, I think, a very similar thing whereby they put it as like a watch with 2 electrodes on the back of it, and when you turn it on, it basically sends an electrical impulse which regulates the contraction of the muscles. So she tried to draw a straight line before, and then after she had this watch on, and then she drew a straight line with Parkinson's. It was all over the shop, but then when she actually turned this watch on, it was just dead straight.
Oh really?
It was
like this
incredible
guy,
what they did.
he had a button that turned his implant on and off.
Yeah.
And he had it on, and he pressed the button, and it turned it off, and he was like that.
Yeah.
And couldn't hold his hand still enough to put the button back on again.
Like it was that bad without it.
It made.
Yeah.
Like it was incredible.
It is mad, considering that that's not an overly complicated piece of tech, really.
No, I mean some people would obviously. I mean, it's a serious case, so you have it. It's invasive surgery, obviously, but
for a cranial implant.
Yeah,
and they do it for what they call them, ocular. What they call them?
The cochlea.
Cochlea implants.
There is an ocular one as well.
There
I want to get onto.
There's a behind the ear one, isn't it?
Yes, it's right about there.
What they call it? But is it? There's a certain name for it, like bone transmission too. I don't know to help with inner ear hearing.
There's something I read about that recently, actually, that Apple have been working with the people who make the cochlear implants, and what they made it is that when you have a phone call, you don't have to wait for the voice to come out of the phone into your implant. It Bluetooths it straight into the implant. So even though you would have to talk back, the person on the other end, you technically don't have to hear it coming out of the phone. There's no physical, there's no sound waves. It beams it straight into your head, and for me, I got way too overexcited about it. I was like, oh, that's so cool.
You know what, I really don't know. I'm the opposite. It's not that it's freaky. Well, I get that you find it freaky. I know that things are moving towards that, and then I think the discussion I always have, and it tends to be with the older generation, is like, oh, where's phone technology going to go next?
Yeah.
And they're always like, oh, it'll be an implant in your arm. And I'm like, no, it won't.
No, because no one's ever going to.
Well, I don't think you're going to have an elective surgery to have a mobile phone. I'm not attached. I don't like the amount I'm attached to my mobile at the moment as it is. Exactly. We've got to have them in sight.
I'm recording time with you.
I don't want mine actually physically attached to me.
Also, I can't imagine walking around just going, yeah, hello?
Yeah.
But it's not even that.
Blood in your hand.
It's not even that. It's like if you buy a laptop, within 2 years, you're way out of date. If I've had an implant, I don't want to be out of date in 2 months.
And also, I don't really feel like going to my computer and just being like, oh, there's a new iOS update. Click. It's going to get an hour to download.
You want to make sure you make the cup of tea before you click into your computer rather than afterwards.
See your nephew's here.
Otherwise, you're just going to be trapped. Oh no, I really need the loo. Do not remove unless you get erupt data. I can't see it.
Like I can't see implants like that. Like you said, technology changes, so you'd have to have it removed and put back in.
Yeah.
And it's not like we talk about the implant every 5 years. I mean, my phone, I bought it 6 months later at that date.
Yeah.
Mine was out of date when we bought it.
Yeah, it is.
And I've moved away from buying the latest and greatest phones. I just don't want to pay for them.
Yes.
And I'm buying cheap Chinese versions. Now I don't want a cheap Chinese version of something that's going to go under my skin.
Yeah. I mean, even though I love biotechnology, something under your skin actually kind of does, it not much creeps me out a little bit, but when I see people playing with their implant, I'm just like,
Oh yeah, no. When my wife had hers, she used to be able to push one end of it, and then the other end would like
and it's
stick
there as
out.
well, that's
Yeah,
really a tender spot, isn't it?
And I'm not particularly squeamish, but that really used to creep me out.
Yeah.
Like just
It's like having a splinter, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
Or,
It is really, isn't it? It's just
Yeah.
a splinter.
and you talk about obviously cochlear implants, and we mentioned ocular implants. And I
Yeah.
did read for people. Yeah, as in, so people who are going blind or people who are blind. And although this is really early days, they get these glasses and they've got a camera on the glasses and it transmits, I'm not sure how it works, but it transmits through light, I think, and to try and stimulate whatever cells you've got left in your
To
eye.
make like a contact lens that did that, that'd be cool.
That's probably, yeah, it's probably
Probably where it's moving.
where it's going, but I assume the glasses, I mean, if you see the battery pack that's attached to these glasses, you know, because obviously you need it on all the time. But it does help in people who are in clinical trials. They did it in Manchester for the first time, Manchester Uni, in 2015, so it's really, really new. And this person, the person I was reading about, it's the middle of his eye, it's just black, and then he sees the picture around the outside. But he can now see doorways, the shape of people. Yeah, they showed a picture of it, and you constantly have to focus on your periphery.
Oh, that'd be awful.
Yeah.
So much bad headaches. Well, I suppose that must. Okay, so he's still got limited vision.
Yes.
In inverted commas, because I mean, he's not, you know.
So he's still got
registered blind.
cells.
Obviously, but
Yeah.
so he's still got cells, and it depends on. I suppose it depends on what the issue was before, and if it was a degenerative disease or.
Which his is.
Or whether it was a straight up Because if you, is there any sort of.
That's more sad.
Degenerative.
Yeah.
Well, my cousin had exactly the same.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Rather than
My cousin had the same thing. Was when she went to university, she was diagnosed with this congenital degenerative eye condition.
Yeah.
Where I think a very similar thing. My understanding is her vision went from the inside out.
That's it. Yes.
And then essentially what she had to do is when she was diagnosed with this when she was like 18, 17, 18. She hadn't learned to drive yet, so she was kind of like, well, do I bother learning to drive?
And then have my license.
And then have my license removed in a couple of years anyway, or do I, you know, do I just not bother?
Yeah.
And I think she ended up deciding that she was going to do it because she liked the experience.
Yeah.
And then so she can say she's done it, but then you know had just had the license taken away once it was gone too far.
Yeah.
I think she doesn't have a guide dog anymore, but she does need help a lot. But yeah, no, it's impressive the way it's moving.
Blindness affects millions of people across the world, and there's millions of people that may go blind because of vitamin A deficiency in their diets, mostly around India and Asia and stuff like that. So blindness is a really big one to try and, I put in air quotes at the moment, to cure. But you know, at the moment that ocular implant, it's very simple. It's more just shapes that you get to see, but the man said it improves your quality of life big time. And I know, like you said, I mean, we picked out the older generation, and I will probably be the same when we're older. It's like, well, my mobile phone's fine. I don't need a pacemaker in my knee.
Like trying to get my grandparents to have hearing aids, like.
And hearing aids.
I don't need a hearing aid.
Hearing aids is a really good example of effectively, but I mean that's more technology on top of you. But you know, it's there to augment your biology.
Yeah, so we always think of technology being like a linear progression sort of thing, but I don't see it being like that, because if you went back to the 1980s and told them you'd be able to connect to anybody in the world using your phone and using the internet, I just don't think that, you know, they wouldn't have seen it coming. It's not like it's not the old
futuristic movie. Flying cars.
Quite literally, mobile phones were invented because of Star Trek.
Really?
Yeah, because the original Star Trek with a flip phone, Motorola made theirs a flip phone because that's what Kirk had and it was cool and people wanted to flip it over.
It's awesome, but I just, so I think we're getting slightly off the topic, and we're getting onto phones and wearable tech rather than actual biotech.
But I think it does come down as well to the attitude towards biotech, because to reiterate a Star Trek analogy, the one thing I see on a lot of people's blog posts or articles and stuff like that is the Borg. And if you don't know what the Borg is, somehow, in the last 20 odd years...
You don't know what the Borg is? So they're basically humanoid life forms that have merged with machines.
They've been assimilated by like a machine culture, so they're like...
Star Trek. I'm going to watch that.
Okay, yeah. So they're completely like... They've completely been augmented by technology. They've got more strength, better eyes, better...
But they're still human.
No, in this they have a hive mind in this. So they're like bees, they're sort of more controlled by queen. But I think when people talk about it, they talk about, oh, are we going to be walking around with metal arms and big things on our eyes? Because
you can get those metal arms.
You can, you've got to loosen arm first.
Well, it's an interesting point actually, because I was listening to someone, they were discussing the fact that you can get synthetic ligaments now that they've now developed that are technically stronger than your natural ligaments in your knees.
Yeah.
So they were saying for like, if you're an NFL player or a football player, and you're obviously, your commercial value is huge.
Yeah.
I mean, you're worth hundreds of millions of pounds to certain people. Now, if you damage your leg and they put in a synthetic ligament, which is better than the normal. No, well, this is it. But if they put in a synthetic ligament and then you go, well, okay, well, this knee now was my bad knee, but now it's even better than my good knee. Well, why not have elective surgery to replace the synthetic
I feel
ligaments?
like that's going to be like banned.
But well, if you've got that much money behind you, you think how much money footballers get paid, and you want to see a return for it.
It's like the same thing of like if I've got enough money to take drugs in sport.
Like performance enhancing. Well, this is it. I mean, if this thing did come around and people were doing this,
you get everyone doing it, or no one doing it, basically.
Yeah, you get a polarization of good and mediocre players. But I mean, it probably would be regulated. But that is also a concern of where we're going. Is most of what we have now is to fix like if you're born deaf, you'll be able to hear. If you're going blind, we can help you see.
Mm-hmm.
It's not making anybody better than the average human at the moment.
No.
And to be honest with you, most of these implants, like the hearing implant, it doesn't give you as good a hearing as we have at the moment.
Well, that was the old argument with Oscar Pistorius entering into the Olympics, wasn't it? Because he had blades rather than legs, and people were getting funny about him. But actually, he wasn't even competitive. He wasn't really competitive in the able-bodied Olympics versus the Paralympics actually. So even when we actually have these discussions in a serious context, they're not realistically there yet.
Not now. I think it's good to start the discussion because we're going there. But and increasingly, it looks like we're moving away from the obvious technology, and like you said, with synthetic ligaments, we're moving towards regenerative biology, which is biotechnology in a sense.
Do you watch Superman?
No.
Okay, because I love that program. But he has this like a mesh thing that he puts in when he's doing surgery, and it's like synthesized so that the bone and the flesh and whatever will grow onto it.
Yes.
Rather than kick it out.
Yeah, because
I don't know what they've done to it. It might be what you were talking about earlier. With
possibly the same sort of thing. When I was working in dental surgery, when they did dental implants, effectively what they did is they inserted a peg which had loads of holes through it.
Yeah.
So essentially what they want, and then I think a very similar film, so it's supposed to grow through it, so what you end up with is like, it's completely encased.
Oh, okay.
So you can't, it's not like you've not like drilled it or screwed it in, it's actually grown into being part of you.
Similar sort of thing.
Yeah. I think with regenerative biology as well, which is great because we did talk about in previous episodes 3D printed organs and using stem cell research to create organs, which obviously when you put it in or on yourself, you don't think of it as biotechnology. Biotechnology created it, so it's not like something metal that you're going to put inside yourself, but it is something that we're doing, and I think people are more geared towards accepting that because it seems more natural. But I thought it was an interesting topic simply because we're going that way much faster now. And as you said, if you lose a limb, it's very early stages and you can't really get them at the moment, they're more tested. If you lose a limb, like say an arm, and they know straight away, there is a procedure that they've tried a few times where they take your nerves for these fingers and they put them in your chest. So you can still kind of like, you're not like pinching like a finger, but you can fire those nerves, and then they put a robotic arm on you with a sensor that can sense these nerve impulses. And they thought, oh well, that's, we can at least get people doing this with a hook. Like that's something. It's a raise in your quality of life.
They have to know it like straight away before
I'm not sure, but I think you can't, basically won't be able to do it with nerve damage. So I think doing it straight away is probably the best. But I think they did it on people who's maybe had been missing arms for a while. But I can't remember. I watched it a couple of years ago now. And what happens is the brain adapts like horrendously quickly. and they can use the whole hand. They can pick things up and put blocks in the right place. They're completely robotic. And obviously, you need a massive battery pack for this, and things like power technology needs to come a long way before we can do that. But the fact that they've got something where just a couple of nerves here can make an entire arm move fairly well. If you watch the video, it's fairly smooth.
So it shows how quickly the biology can adapt rather than the technology.
They know your brain can adapt quickly, but these tests show like, oh wow, the brain can really adapt. Like there was another one where a woman was quadriplegic.
Yeah.
And I mean, she had a big plug sticking out of her head. So this was very invasive and needed cleaning and stuff like that. Much more extreme. But she could move one of these arms with her brainwaves and nerves impulses and stuff like that. So and she's quadriplegic. So she as much as she'd like to do things for herself, she can't. But this gave her some of her independence back. Now she could only use it in the lab. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if she was that delicate with it, but again, the shapes test. She could pick things up. Yeah, she could pick things up and not break them, stuff like that. And I'm personally wondering whether in the next maybe say 20 or 30 years, still far a little bit way down the line, relatively close, we're going to get to the point where losing an arm isn't a big deal.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it kind of creates that crossover with some of the movie stuff we talked about in the last one, where you actually look at some of the technology in the movies.
Yeah.
And you go things like Luke Skywalker gets a fully robotic arm, which you would, for all intents and purposes, you wouldn't know was any different to it.
No, exactly.
And then there's several other films where I've seen where you get these almost systems where you put your hand in and it will regrow you a limb.
Yeah.
Stuff. So it's as much as science fiction. Well, yeah, it's a little.
It's like fast 3D printing, like laser printing. And there's Ghost in the Shell with put a brain into a completely synthetic body.
Yeah, which is an interesting concept because I listened to a few things where people were like, "That's the way it's going to go. That's the way it's going to go." And I don't, because effectively what she had was her brain removed and put into a bionic body.
A body transplant is what she had.
Yeah, which I can't really. One, I don't see many people consenting to. It's kind of part of the movie.
It would work if you could get past.
Obviously,
it would work if you could get past the fact that your blood has antibodies and things like that.
But if you still think as you,
it's still your brain. Your body is a biomechanical suit to keep your brain alive.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
But it is fully integrated.
Yes,
like you couldn't although you might be able to recreate a beating heart outside of the body by stimulating it with electrodes, but it's not going to work indefinitely. It's not like the way our biology works.
And I mean, our bodies have millions. Well, really, our bodies have billions of years of evolution.
Yeah.
So to try and recreate that in a lab is extremely difficult.
And despite the fact they might be slightly fragile.
Yeah.
So you still have to come up with new ways of generating.
Yeah, no, I think regenerative biotechnology is where we're probably going to head to, where people will go in and say, "Oh, I've had a heart attack. A heart is a big one as well. I've had a heart attack. My heart's damaged. That's fine. Print you a new one. Give us an hour. We'll pop it in, and you'll be gone by the end of the day."
Well, I think even when you get close to the present day, when you go, okay, well, we've got this big problem with diabetes in the UK, and you go, okay, well, particularly type 1 is complete lack of insulin. Well, now we can then generate human insulin from a
bacterial.
Yeah, bacterial, or even it's a yeast now. So using a eukaryotic system, we can commercially manufacture human proteins, which can be applied, given to people as therapeutics, which is miles ahead of what. Sorry, it's my watch. So it's miles ahead of where we were even sort of 20 years ago. And moving forward from there, we're going to be able to do things with cancer drugs and stuff where again specific targeted drugs rather than this chemo system, which is effectively just dump a load of toxins and try and kill cancer faster than it kills you.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Which I think is
it's extreme. I can easily see in 100 years people looking back and going, dark ages of medicine. That is just pumping you full of poison to make sure the disease dies before you. Like that's.
But I think sometimes those things, those sort of the pharmaceutical stuff, goes under the radar because it's not the obvious bionic arm, bionic eye. You're not the $5 billion man or whatever it was. you're not. Those sorts of advancements in biotechnology go way under the radar sometimes, particularly for the the general populace. It's a little bit easier for us being actually involved in it constantly.
That's the point of this as well, a little bit, isn't it? Yeah, sorry. You brought me up to a topic, and the heart of the topic. I want to go back to the heart simply because research at the moment, current research, is that there are animals that can heal their hearts if there is a problem with them, and what they do is the damage stimulates stem cells to regrow, whereas in humans, if we damage our heart, it turns to scar tissue, and it's not as flexible as regular tissue, and that's when you get heart damage. If you have too many heart attacks, you will just die.
Well, there's a big movement. I know that there's biggest ethical issues with it, but there's a thing. I can't remember who it was. Somebody was having stem cell shots.
Yeah.
So what they were doing is that there was a guy who was paying for a woman's elective C-section, and as in exchange for paying for her C-section, I think this is America. It's like $40,000.
Yeah.
He got her placenta.
Right.
Which was then being sent to a lab so they could spin out all the stem cells, and then he was having the stem cell shot into his wrist because he had a wrist issue. And it's something I've heard about several times before. It's not a one-off thing. There's an actual system called Regenerative, which is exactly the same thing, whereby they're shooting stem cells into an injured area, into an injured shoulder, an injured knee.
Yeah.
And it will take, because they're stem cells, they'll take the form of any
cell around them.
Yeah, any cell around them because of cell signaling, and then basically rebuild your shoulder. So rather than having to be full of scar tissue, or even the idea of putting in synthetic ligaments or tendons, well, if you can just grow your own tendon back to where it should have been, that's a much better system than actually having to open up anybody, particularly if you can do it with an injection as well.
And I think that's where it's going to go. People are more accepting as well, generally, of biological approaches, because like I said, it is biotechnology, and our bodies are pretty good at repairing. Repairing themselves. We're not very good at replacing stuff, and that's where they want to go to, is when we start replacing cells and replacing tissues rather than just repairing. You get burned, you get a scar. You don't replace the tissue. You just repair what's there. And
the closest thing you can get is a skin graft, which is still an invasive surgery.
You still get a scar.
You get a scar.
It's one of those. It's better, and it's also one of those that I can quite easily see in 100 years them going back and just going, they used to just cut skin off people and glue it onto other people, and it's just like, some egg game stuff, isn't it? It's really creepy. So one thing most people are very familiar with is things like phantom pain. So if you lose a limb, you can quite often, people report getting pain through that limb even though it doesn't exist. So it's a phantom limb and you're getting pain through it. And I watched a documentary a few years ago, and it's a man who's, I think he lost his arm like 20 years ago or something like that. And for 20 years, he's felt like his fist has been clenched constantly. Can you imagine the pain of clenching your fist for 20 years? And he says
was that because he lost it while it was...
No, that's just it. They don't really understand why. Maybe it's just because your nerves get stuck in this loop.
There's that thing with the mirror, isn't there? You put your hand in front of the mirror and then they whack a hammer down the other side or something.
Oh, I've seen that.
Oh, really?
It's there, it's not.
Well, with this man, he gets this awful pain through his arm, and he takes painkillers constantly. But like I said, painkillers, they wear off eventually. Like, they stop being effective.
How does that help if it's not there?
Because
it will dull whatever nerve impulses are causing this pain.
Oh, I see.
But like you said, it's not that effective, and it's not. Its quality of life is reduced by it. So what they did is they put him in virtual reality, where I think they hooked it up as well to like brainwaves as well. So in virtual reality, he can see that he's got two arms now, and he gets to unclench his fist and move his hands and all this. And he said for the first time in like 20 years, the pain subsided for a brief amount of time. Of course, as soon as he comes out, a couple hours later, it comes back again. But they said, you do this every day,
you should be.
And he instantly said like the relief and the quality of life just goes up.
It's going to be better for your system.
Yeah, exactly. And all it was is just trying to trick the brain. You have an arm and you can. Oh, my fist is open. So like they said, there might be some psychology to it as well, because if it was just purely nerves, just seeing a digital hand open shouldn't affect the pain, but it did. And like I said, although that's not biotechnology, it's technology to help your biology.
Well, I remember having a discussion with you last year was that when we were looking at some protein modeling software, so looking at actual enzymes and the way that substrates fit, and we were playing around with a bit of software that was basically optimizing enzymes.
Yes.
If you remember rightly.
Yeah.
And we were saying that if you had this system in a 3D virtual reality, and you could actually physically pick up
Yes.
enzymes and fit substrates together and play around with it, and you combine this with this optimization software, you'd be able to create novel enzymes that aren't found in biology, or you could. There are ways of taking that same technology. I think it's the way you look at these things. It's quite often that a lot of what we discussed today is multiple ways of using similar technologies that have just been certain people have marketed or just slightly altered them. And they completely changed where the way that limbs were, regeneration of limbs, or nerve impulses to move, robotic limbs and things like that. So you can imagine, I don't see it as an impossibility where if you had a surgery done in where the surgeon's doing it in virtual reality. Oh. Whereby if they, it's robotic arms actually conducting the surgery.
They do have.
They do, they do have that. It's absolutely amazing. So it basically it adjusts for they're sitting behind a computer, they're immersed, and it adjusts for the surgeon's big actions on a small scale. So you'll be like, okay, well, I want to cut that. But really, in real life, it's just like you can't barely see it. And I've seen the machinery, like I said, in like pictures and articles and stuff. It is amazing.
It must cost a fortune. That's the only trouble with some of this stuff, is that it takes so long to come down in price. And you think about although you take DNA sequencing as an example, which has obviously changed the way that biology works. Was it $1 billion back in 2001 for the Human Genome Project?
Yeah, 2001, 2002.
We're now in 2017, so 16 years later, and we're already at near. We got down to the $1,000 genome.
Yeah, I mean, I can. If you don't want a low quality one, you could just set my genome off and pay a few £100, and they'll come back. I think it's about 88% sequence, but.
And you can do sections as well, like I was doing in my.
I
was just sending off a section of DNA. We were sending off like 100 a day.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how affordable it was.
It's crazy when you think about it, but it's going to become an issue with this just the sheer volume of data that you have to analyse. We're going to have to make massive leap forward in how we analyse all this data together to actually make it usable.
Because you were saying about price as well, I forgot to mention like the ocular one is priced at £150,000. Now. It depends as well what country your healthcare is in. And the thing about blindness is that people who are affected by it most tend to be people that live in poorer areas because, again, it's vitamin A deficiency from lack of nutrition, which I know they're trying to bring GM foods into all of that and stuff like that. But at the same time, when we create this technology, it is expensive, especially in the beginning, like you said. I mean, in the last 15 years, it's gone from $1 billion to a couple of grand or a grand, which is ridiculous. It's 1,000,000 times smaller in price.
Well, I was on Twitter yesterday and I put together that thread that was talking basically about the way the industry and the bottom line profits of these companies affect the way the science goes. So, for instance, there were cancer drugs always remain a really popular investment for people because the value of shares for cancer therapies, or the worldwide cost of cancer therapy went from 91 billion in 2012 to 113 billion in 2016.
Yeah.
And that leap that's making a lot of people a lot of money. But of course, it is forcing companies down that avenue. Though it's always going to go towards the money. But my question was the ethical reasons of where is that? Are people trying to push this stuff out too quickly? Because there's a massive opportunity where if you can develop a system that's $150,000 a time, but it's adopted by even a very small fraction of those who are blind.
It's big profits.
That's massive money, huge amounts of money that people are making. But of course, the biotech industry itself is famed for being so up and down with the fact that you might come up with one of those things, but if you lose the intellectual property on it, you're done for. Your company can pretty much fold.
And it is worth mentioning. I'm not sure if it was you that put this up or whether it was somebody else on our Twitter or I read it on our Twitter. that most public biotech companies make a loss, actually.
That's mental. Isn't it?
Yeah. Private ones, obviously, they're for profit, and you have to understand that's the way the world works.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and there are ethics behind that we won't get into, but that's the way the world works. And if they don't make profit, they can't continue research, and we need research. So sometimes you have to sort of blur that line. But yeah, most public biotech companies make a loss per year because they're not really for high profits. They are for research, and that is worth taking away because I think biotech companies and movies don't help it. The movies always paint them in kind of a shady kind of thing. You know, you got your Blade Runner just came out. And so you need to remember that there are biotech companies you've probably never heard of that make a loss every year but bring out amazing advances to make our quality of life better.
Yeah, that you won't even realise that you're using or that you've interacted with, or
tell me who made the contraceptive.
Couldn't tell you.
Exactly. I don't know.
I think that's probably a good place to finish off.
Hopefully it's a bit of a shorter one. A couple of edit points, sorry, due to just equipment short notice really, isn't it? I did write upon our first episode that these rooms and equipment, we have to book them day by day. So unfortunately it's not always the best, and we're trying to do what we can. But hopefully you can hear okay, and hopefully that you can see okay.
Yeah.
I try to get the video. If anybody here uses YouTube, you know how awful it is to try and get a YouTube video to look nice because they compress it really badly. But thank you very much for watching or listening. We are trying to get this uploaded as an audio file as well. But again, we've had issues with that because of just large file sizes and time constraints and stuff like that. But feel free to follow us on our Twitter because we don't just talk about this stuff. We do talk about biotechnology, but we talk every day. A team of us tweeting. We've got 2 different Twitter accounts. So our Twitter account is at BioQuizzical, the same as this YouTube channel, and Maddie's team's account is at Biotech Musings. They will be in the description below. And well, that's really it. But yeah, if you want to follow, and of course, if you want to hear more from us, then do please subscribe on YouTube as well.
And hit us up in the comments. We'd like to hear what you think about what we've been discussing.
Yeah, that's the whole point. This is a discussion, isn't it? You know.
Absolutely.
And getting public feedback, non-expert feedback, is really, really important. And even if it's just perception of the whole biotech industry or field or whatever.
Absolutely.
So yeah. Well, thank you very much for watching.
Thank you very much.